Welcome to episode 3. This episode is going to cover a few fears, underlying subconscious fears. First one is the deep-rooted fear of shame. You know what? I'm not an expert on shame. I just know that shame is a really big one. And oftentimes we don't even realize that we can have the things that we want because of shame. Guilt is the same. A lot of the times we make decisions based on the pain-to-pain ratio. Will this be beneficial to us or will this shoot us in the foot? Will this be painful or will this be easy kind of thing? And we're making decisions based on this principle of the pain versus pain ratio. Again, if you don't know what the pain versus pain ratio is, I highly recommend checking out my free course called the Map of Life. But I think, have an illustration here. Maybe I don't. Basically, the pain versus pain ratio, it's very similar to the pro versus con ratio. What are the pros and what are the cons? If the cons outweigh the pros, then typically you might not make a decision that leans in the direction of saying yes. But if the pros outweigh the cons, then you're like, oh yeah, cool. But be warned, sometimes these are traps, and you don't realize there's actually an underlying clause. And the clause has massive leverage. So just be mindful of that. And it's kind of like that with shame and guilt. Shame is dictating so many people's lives. Guilt is dictating our lives and it's affecting our choices. Notice how, if you step back and you simply observe your creation, by the way, you are the creator and you are the observer, you will just look at how you create your shame. Look at how you create your guilt. Observe that. Now, next one, fear of getting hurt. This is a huge one. You go on YouTube, type that in, fear of getting hurt or fear of hurt. I was so shocked to find this out. There's almost no videos on YouTube talking about it, except a few videos from 15 years ago. And this is one of my personal fears. Look back at some of your old diary entries from a few years ago. Look at some of your old vlogs that you made to yourself a few years ago that you left on private. Notice yourself ever talking about how you're afraid of getting hurt, how you see other people potentially hurting you. Maybe you were hurt because it's already in your heart and you don't even realize it's there. You're afraid of getting hurt. Now, when it comes to the subject of emotional safety and psychological safety, which is actually the number one underlying factor that we need to be focusing our attention on for our partner, and the way we create emotional and psychological safety is by seeing them as, not as a villain, but as secure already, and we already see ourselves as being an emotionally secure person. I think I lost track there. Just notice, fear of getting hurt, it's not the same thing as fear of getting rejected. Although you still get hurt when you get rejected, it's only because you identify with your rejection. There's the fear of rejection there. That was one of my biggest fears. There's the fear of abandonment. That was also one of my massivest fears. I was abandoned a few times. But because it happened in my childhood, I kept that as a part of me in a sense, and it just sort of showed up that way in my love life. And there's another fear here, the fear of being unloved. I can't go too much into detail with that one because it's not one I personally experience as much, but just recognize that these are fears that we may be harboring within our heart. And now you know. That's the point. Now you know. Now, I could say to you, how do you stop being afraid of getting rejected? How do you stop being afraid of getting abandoned? The only solution I can give you right now is that take baby steps and just, like a painter painting a painting, you just do one stroke at a time. And by continually stroking, you eventually create a painting. And the painting takes form. And it just becomes your natural way of life. And you might think inherently you're not afraid of rejection or you're not afraid of abandonment at some point. But then even if you're asked a bunch of questions, are you afraid, like what happens? What would you do in this scenario? What would you do in that scenario? Like, your romantic interest has said something mean to you, or they've left you for 3 days. How do you feel? Do you feel alone? Do you feel completely calm? Do you not even notice it? Kind of like those quizzes. You basically don't want any of this to be in your heart. It should not exist in your mind or your heart, because if it exists in your mind and your heart, then it is going to exist in your external reality. So you have to basically not fear getting abandoned. Let me give you my best example from my own experience. When my mother threatened to kick me out of home once, out of many times, there was this one time I said, okay. I wasn't afraid. And she's like, oh, really? Because her trying to kick me out was a form of control, trying to control me. And I just said, okay. Because I don't care. If you care about your problem, then the problem has control over you. But if you don't care about your problem, then the problem doesn't necessarily even exist. It is you caring about a thing that actually causes the pain. Imagine you haven't seen your romantic interest for years or months, and and you really desperately want them to be with you so bad. But it is you wanting them to begin with that's actually causing you pain at all. And so you have to not want your romantic interest in a sense. You have to not care about your romantic interest in a sense, because it's you wanting and caring about the thing or a problem that makes it painful. And so if you just don't want the thing, or you don't care about it, and not from a regretful and angry position, but just from knowing that it is the caring and the wanting that causes the pain in the first place, you can logically see now you shouldn't, just don't want it. My car is parked out the back. When you have the thing that you want, do you continue wanting the thing after you have it? Imagine the feeling of what it would be like to already have what you want. Would you then continue to want what you already have? Maybe you might just get bored and you're like, oh, okay, like cool. It's like something in your cupboard. You don't think about it. And that's the secret to manifestation, is you don't think about it. Because everyone in the manifestation community always says, you've got to think. But at the same time, that burns you out. It backfires, or it can backfire. And a lot of the time, you might not really see it work. And that's because that's only part of the story. Yes, at first, you initially want, you initially think, but then you have to stop. And some people say, let go, drop it, surrender. Another weird-ass buzzwords. But the most important buzzword I can give you is that to actually crystallize and manifest your desire is you simply fall asleep to it. You don't think about it. When you least expect it, out of the blue, it just happens. For example, you know how when you're looking for your wallet or your pair of keys or your purse or an important item that belongs to you, and you've lost it, you can't find it. You just had the thing, and you look everywhere and you can't find the thing. That's really important. You need it. Sometimes it's even days later, still can't find it. But then one day when you least expect it, out of the blue, it's right in front of your face. And that's how manifestation actually can work a lot of the time. And the reason it appeared in front of your face is because you fell asleep to the thing that you were looking for. You fell asleep to it. You didn't think about it. See how when you kind of like stopped thinking about it, you didn't stop necessarily desiring it per se, because of course you wanted the thing, but you kind of just fell asleep to that whole thing. You just kind of seceded from that. And that's how that works. If you want your desire to work out, if you want love, etc., that's how it works. You just kind of secede from wanting. And gratitude is the attitude, by the way. Gratitude is the attitude. Being delulu is the solulu. In your mind and your heart. Not by imposing yourself on your romantic interest. Trying to force your way. No, you just keep it a secret to yourself. Because if you don't keep it secret and you say, hey, I want us to be together, like, you're super obvious, no tension. How would you feel if someone just say, hey, like, I'm trying to manifest you into a relationship. You're now my girlfriend, or you're now my boyfriend. What are they likely going to say to that? So you keep it secret. I highly recommend reading the book called Prayer, the Art of Believing. Read it 20 times. Not joking, read it 20 times. You can hear it for free on YouTube, but I highly recommend reading the actual book yourself. Why? Because reading books on Audible, it's a lot like drinking a smoothie. You get all the nutrients, but you don't really get a full meal. Whereas if you read a book, you get the steak and you get the beans and the potatoes. And it's just different forms, different aspects of the digesting of the thing. And I say digest both forms, and continue to digest both forms, because there are lessons in that book that will make sense when it clicks. And part of the lesson in that book is the subject of telepathy, which basically means subconscious communication. And in subconscious communication, you can actually bypass knowledge and consent. And preferably, obviously, you want to, do this in a non-malicious manner, okay? That's how it works. Because if you intend to inflict malice onto another party, it likely can backfire onto you. Some people might call that karma. This is the law of an eye for an eye. If you inflict fire, fire shall be returned onto you. That's how it works. So, think well of the other party. Think well of yourself. See yourself as already loved. And imagine scenarios of where you're already together. And just dwell in that space. In your heart. Just live there in your heart. Because it is because of you living in your heart. It is where you are in your heart. But the external reality around you is affected. And I know this is working because I've had my own personal experiences. And I think this is probably not something you could really relate to. You might even dismiss me and say, oh yeah, this is full of shit. But when you actually go out of your own way and try and sort of see for yourself and experience it for yourself, you'd be like, holy shit, what the fuck? But that's only something that you can do. That is the end of this lesson for now. See you in the next episode.